Welcome back to today's program here on the Taiwan Outlook. I'm your host, Ray Guo. In this segment, we will continue our conversation with Mr. David Frazier, who is the co-founder and director of the Urban Nomad Film Festival here in Taiwan. David, at the earlier segment, you were talking about the movie The Cove. You want to continue with that story?
Sure. Okay, so The Cove, as we just mentioned,
yes.
Won the Oscar in 2010 for Best Documentary, and subsequently it gained a great deal of attention.
Yes.
And the reason that we liked this film is that it raises the issue in a way that sort of everyone can relate to of
course.
You know, of what's going on with ocean life, of overfishing, of how much fishing do we need to do, the industrial fishing. It specifically focuses on killing dolphins, and in this case, it's killing a lot of dolphins. The meat's contaminated, so people shouldn't be eating it anyway, and so in a lot of ways it seems like a really senseless activity.
Of course.
Right, so, you know, we think people should be questioning and should be raising questions about how do we protect the ocean environment.
Okay.
And so and then we had the opportunity to show this film at our festival, and we thought that this was terrific. It's getting a lot of publicity. Was
that the only occasion it was shown in Taiwan? I don't think it was released commercially, was it?
It actually was released commercially, but the special thing for us was we were allowed to host the Taiwan premiere of this film.
Okay.
So if someone wanted to be the first one to buy a ticket and see the film in Taiwan, they could do it at our festival. And it was released in theaters, commercial theaters, about a week later, and I think it's still playing. I think now it's like number 20 on the box office list. But to add something special and to add an extra component, maybe a more activist component, because to this film, we also invited activists, and we also, before it, we showed another short film about endangered Taiwanese dolphins off the west coast of Taiwan, which was a short film made by activist groups that also debuted that same night at our festival.
All right.
And the idea was that, so we have this international issue, or this issue that's more related to Japan, but we also want people to know what are the issues here in Taiwan.
Precisely.
Right.
Okay.
And we also want them to be able to, once they finish watching the film and they wonder, now I'm so moved, what do I do? Who do I get in touch with? So we have those activist groups in the lobby, and they have tables, and you can contact the SPCA, Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, Mazu's Fish Unit, and other groups who can tell you directly what their activities are, and you can decide if you want to be involved with them. So, you know, we thought that that's really important to do. So it's not just a movie.
No. And this year, for the film festival, had a very clear message. Of course, it's social, consciousness on environmental issues. Is that going to be a continued trend for future film festivals that you organize for the Nomad?
Every year, we've always had documentaries and films related to social consciousness. So that's always been a part of what we do. It hasn't always been specifically on the environment or specifically on a certain issue, right? I mean, we've showed films about the so-called AIDS villages in China, you know, where through blood banks and government programs, a large number of people were infected with the HIV virus, and it's totally decimating those communities. And we've showed films, a film about Singapore Rebel, which is about freedom of speech and things in Singapore. So you know, the territory varies, but it's all within the same general theme.
But we were discussing that the film festival over the years has gotten a lot bigger than you first started 8 years ago. And you've also made some connections with other regional film festivals in Asia Pacific. How did you make those connections? What did they learn about you first, or you learn about them, and how you cooperate and collaborate on the work together?
Mostly these kind of connections are actually individual connections. So, for example, when I go travel somewhere. You know, I'll try to add on my itinerary a stop or schedule
a visit to somebody.
Yeah, schedule a meeting.
Okay.
And the same thing has happened with directors and film programmers who've come through Taiwan. So, you know, I've met Mervyn Espina, is a really great film programmer in the Philippines.
Yes.
I've met a bunch of independent filmmakers from Singapore. You know, and you know, a few people from China. You know, who are sort of collecting these films that cannot necessarily be shown in their own country, but are happy to pass them on and have them screened here.
Okay, good. But also, at the same time, in addition to organizing the film festival here in Taiwan, you've also brought films from the festival onto other countries in the neighboring area. How do audiences over there react to films that are made in Taiwan?
Let's see. We have been to Hong Kong. A couple years ago. We were hosted by a local arts group there.
Okay.
And actually, we've also been invited to participate in art fairs in Basel, Switzerland, and Miami. Quite large art fairs.
Okay.
So the reaction, I mean, has been good. People are impressed with the quality. You know, it's and people enjoy, especially sort of like the cute animation. I mean, Taiwan is quite good at animation. Even university students are putting out very professional-looking 3D animation stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, so the reception has been quite good.
Okay. Do you think that there may be areas that, you know, independently made films in Taiwan could work on and become even more internationally accepted or recognized?
I think what Taiwanese young and independent filmmakers need to do is, first of all, understand the international market a little bit better, to apply to international film festivals and be more
competition,
competitions, and be more proactive about that.
Okay.
And you know, and maybe even sort of travel to see these things. You know, if I mean, there are big animation film festivals in Europe. There's one in Annecy in France coming up, I think, next month. And if you go to those places and see the environment and actually take part in the discussion and the you know, the community,
of course,
then you'll get a better understanding. Where Taiwan in itself, the community here is a bit isolated.
Yes, and David, we know that for the Urban Nomad Film Festival, you did the project many years ago, 8 years ago. You didn't do it for commercial reasons.
No.
Okay, so a lot of people may wonder, after 8 years of running the film festival in Taiwan, how are you doing in terms of revenue and expenses?
We're still a low-cost film festival.
All right.
I think that's fair to say. Our goal every year is to break even.
Okay. Have you been able to do that?
Yes.
Okay.
By and large,
That's
yes.
good to know. Yeah.
Right. So, and we're self-supporting, so we rely on our box office and some small corporate sponsorship.
Okay.
We don't take money. We don't have any government funding, which separates us from, I think, every other film festival in Taiwan.
Yeah.
But you know, like I said, we try to stay small and sustainable.
Okay.
And that's sort of the point for us, because if we do that, then we know we can be here next year.
Okay.
Exactly. We don't have to worry about administration change or, you know, changes in arts funding or anything like that.
Well, but do you think that, you know, in terms of continued support for such a project like yours, would it be, you know, should there be more interest from the corporations? You know, would the more corporate sponsorship help something like your Urban Nomad Film Festival?
I think actually what would help most is what would help us most is a PR sponsorship. I think there are lots of very, very strong arts events in Taiwan that are small scale because they can't compete in terms of PR with Hollywood movies or you know or others, say, like very large productions.
Okay.
and the government has this ability, and I would say that this is one thing the government might consider. I mean, not necessarily for our event, but for other arts events in Taiwan, to sort of lend a PR arm that could generate publicity and partnerships. That could bring people into the theaters or to events. Because, I mean, the goal in the end is to have a strong box office, and you want
self-sustaining.
Right, and you want the events to be full and to sell well. So I think
besides corporation, the government can do a little more too. But also this the same reason being that when you talk about independent film festivals like yours, you're looking at maybe so-called non-mainstream moviegoers, and how do you think that in Taiwan we need to educate a whole new generation or expand the existing crowd that are interested in independently made films or documentaries?
I think Taipei actually has a quite well-educated core fan base for the so-called non-mainstream films. The Golden Horse Film Festival, the Taipei Film Festival, I mean, they're in 400-seat theaters. And
they're normally sold out.
And the top films will always sell out, and then the films you've never heard of will be three-quarters full. They're quite successful. There's an audience, and people are all buying tickets to sit in those theaters. So if you contrast that to what's happening in every other city in Taiwan, Taichung, Tainan, Kaohsiung, also similar population sizes, comparable to Taipei, roughly. If you go to those cities, your event has to be free. If you go to the Hsinchu Image Museum, the admission is 20 NT, which is about 65 cents US, unless senior citizens are free, maybe. If you go to Kaohsiung, the events have to be free because people will not buy tickets. So I think something has to happen in those other cities. Because Taiwan is a small place, but if you have a situation where someone can come and, say, a festival like ours can tour to different cities, which we're starting to do.
That would be helpful.
Right. Then suddenly the economic opportunities, for this sort of like a free market culture becomes much greater.
Good. We're going to take another break on the program, and when we come back, we will continue our conversation with Mr. David Frazier, who is the co-founder and director of the Urban Nomad Film Festival here in Taiwan. I'll see you in a few minutes.